I invite you now to take a walk through history in the poetry and the cadence of a woman who I consider to be a giant in her work, Miss CeLillianne Green. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to thank the Underground Railroad History Project for the opportunity to be here this morning. A special thank you to Mary Nell for recommending me to the organization. I'm very grateful to her for that. And I also want to thank Paul and Mary Liz for the work that they've done to start the organization and also to facilitate me being here. As I think about the Underground Railroad, and I think about my presence as a Black woman here, I thank sponsors who have helped me, but I also thank the sponsors who've helped this organization to continue. And as a poet, I understand the importance of sponsors. And as a Black woman, I understand the importance of paying homage to those people who have gone before me. So I'd like to start by paying tribute to three wise women. Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, and Ida B. Wells. Three wise women with much to tell. They lived with the power and dignity of a proud race, carrying the womanhood this country tried to erase. Pedestals they did not need, they were elevated by their deeds. Sojourner talked, Harriet walked, Ida balked. Detractors sought to knock these women down. Those detractors could not stop their freedom sound. Sojourner replaced her enslaver's name with the name of Truth. The truth is what she spoke to countless groups. Moses, they called Harriet as she traveled north and south. Freeing her people from bondage is what she was all about. Ida wrote of lynchings of Black people by the score. Her facts and figures could not be ignored. Tirelessly, these wise women worked to see their people free. Because of their work, I can stand and be me. Three wise women, my pyramid of power. I can call on them at any hour. They sent me a message that they're watching my back. I know they will help me to stay on track. These wise women moved in God's truth. The fact that I stand here is the ultimate proof of the power of what a Black woman can do. So I honor Sojourner, Harriet, and Ida too. Three wise women. Oh, thank you. I start with them because it is important for me to acknowledge who I come from. I have those ladies in a frame together in my home. I see them every day. So when I think about what I might not be able to do, I remember what they did with what they did not have. So it is in that space that you think about what Harriet Tubman did. This is Women's History Month. We have the Underground Railroad. And what Black people have done throughout history, not just in this country, but throughout the world. And I, for one, feel that it is really, really very important that we acknowledge that space in which race, privilege, denial, and who matters actually exists in America, because it does exist. Now, race is a construct created by who? Europeans to what? To disconnect formerly enslaved people from indentured servants so that they would know that being white was going to be beneficial to you, being Black would not be. And yet the country has operated under this myth of what? Colorblindness. Colorblindness is a disorder of the eye. It is a disorder of the eye. It is a disorder of the eye. And not only has America never been colorblind, it does have no intention to be colorblind. The documents that they created to form this country, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution in particular, the Constitution relegated the enslaved population in this country to the notion of 3/5 of a human being. And therein lies part of the larger problem that exists in the consciousness and the psyche, if you will, of American people. They see the Black skin as less than human, 3/5, not quite whole. So if you think that a person is not quite whole, you can question whether their lives matter. And you also need to utilize this notion of their inhumanity to justify your dehumanization of them. So the reality for us is that we have a country that operates in a myth, the myth that it has been colorblind. And about 2 weeks ago, I saw on a nightly news program that they've now developed a pair of eyeglasses that you can get a prescription for, because there's no cure for colorblindness, but it helps you to see color. And when you see people, to see their color is to acknowledge the wholeness and the fullness of who they are. To see me is to see a black woman. I'm proud to be a black woman. To see me and just say, oh, I see a woman, is to ignore what you actually see. And why would you need to ignore who I am in my connection as an African woman? We are not a colorblind nation, and we never have been. And colorblindness in and of itself is a form of that denial that continues in America. So we deny. When you deny the truth, you'll never heal. The country cannot heal in a space of denial. So I commend all of you who are here today to work in a conscious way to do that which we need to do in terms of conversations about what is going on in America and what has been happening. So we get back to this notion of privilege and who has it. Who can decide what privilege is? Who can decide who matters? Typically in America, it's decided by judges, legislators. Perhaps you can have organizations that might decide who matters. But if you think in this country, we've had a Supreme Court justice by the name of Taney. Justice, some might pronounce it T-A-N-E-Y is how you spell it. But in 1856, in Dred Scott v. Sanford, he made the remark that a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. And for many, this continues to be a space in which we operate. Last week in Maryland, the family of Justice Taney apologized for that statement. The town of Frederick, Maryland removed his statue from in front of I think it was the mayor's office, or certainly a government building. So we are beginning to make progress, if you will, in terms of how we see and refer to each other. But there are continuing to be problems. So let's take, for example, the notion of interactions with law enforcement. We have a situation where far too many African American males end up dead at the hands of police. In the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth rather of Virginia, they enacted a statute called an Act About the Casual Killing of Slaves. An Act About the Casual Killing of Slaves. And this is based on the notion that if during the course of meting out punishment for the misbehavior of your enslaved human being, they died, it would be deemed a casual killing. And I've written a poem about this, and as it relates from then to now, because the past is always in the present. The past does not always feel pleasant, but it is always in the present. Casual killing. We are not here to be your minister. Instead, we convert you into that which is sinister. A monster, a demon, a menace. For causing your death, we will not do penance. We convert your humanity into what, not who we see. In our conversion, we see no basis for humanity. Your humanity we have been taught not to see. 3/5 of a human is the origin of your pedigree. It was written in the U.S. Constitution. The 13th Amendment was a compromise solution. Prisons have not stopped using the labor of slaves, and for police killings, charges are waived. The law upheld the casual killing of a slave. No remorse, it was not viewed as depraved. What's the difference between a slave and you? Casual killing still holds true. You casually kill each other too. This is what centuries of self-hate can do. Your casual killing, your self-hate, the system can easily accommodate. Arrest, charges, trials, prison, probation, and parole. For you, the system has a clear goal. The system accommodates us as well. We have a different story to tell. The system is just for us. And this is why you continue to fuss. We need not march, protest, or make demands. For us, the system works just as planned. Grand jurors ensure we are not publicly tried. Your death by our hands will be justified. We kill with impunity and with government immunity. Your acts of surrender, we do not remember. Hands in the air, we do not care. A boy, a teenager, a mother, a father, protecting your life, we need not bother. In you, we see a danger, a suspect. We see melanin in your complexion. We see a weapon. This is how we profile you, men, women, and children too. It is not possible to serve and protect people who we profile and do not respect. We can beat or kill black women without hesitation, knowing the outcry will not span the nation. In 2 seconds, we can shoot your boy dead on a playground, and we expect the system to protect us as we move around. We can end your teenager's life and leave his body in the street, a 4.5-hour warning in midday summer heat. For you, this is how we meet and greet. Our power and control is not meant to be discreet. We represent the system. We embody the law. You are not to question what we say or do. Do not speak unless spoken to. You must obey. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am are the words to say. The words I can't breathe are not on our list. These words sound like you're starting to resist. To resist our chokehold is much too bold. It means you're attempting to live. Your attempt to live we cannot forgive. In a system born of racism and persistent hate, your words, your breathing carry very little weight. A breathing is not our priority for you. Our prior conduct has shown this is true. If you say I can't breathe multiple times, each time increases your resistance in our minds. How can you desire to breathe and to be free? The desire for freedom is a human condition. For you to want it raises our suspicions. We see your breathing insistence as an act of resistance. We define resistance exclusively. It does not matter what others see. The people who videotape, watch, or hear, these witnesses do cause us to fear. To fear your humanity might be accepted. To fear your desire to live might be respected. Yet witnesses do not temper our behavior. We know the system will rule in our favor. So of course we can use more force. We decide when to escalate the situation regardless of witness observations. It is our judgment to make. If you die, we made a casual mistake. We need not have a pretense in the line of duty as our defense. The system serves and protects us without reservation. It is what we deserve. It is our expectation. This system was not designed with you in mind, except to control, contain, or confine. Of course, liberty and justice for all is America's ideal, but for you, this was not meant to be real. Thus, your death by our hands is really not a crime. The prosecutor will make sure at just the right time. In the meantime, we do share a common thread. If we interact, you could end up dead. So casual, thank you. Casual killing, in many ways, is just the continuum of what happened when people were enslaved in this country. So you have to think about always knowing what is in the past that has happened that is always present. America is at a crossroads right now. And we have to think about what we will do, we the people, what will we do at this crossroads? That is the title of my talk today, The Crossroads. And each one of you got a card when you came in here. You should all have a blank card. Blank card. You can just pass them around. And what I wanted you to do with this card is to write on there how you identify yourself ethnically or racially on one side. Don't put your name on it. Do not put your name on this. And on the other side, list any privileges or benefits that you've derived as a result of your racial identification on the other side. And while you're doing that, I'm going to begin to read a poem that I wrote in 2015. When I was asked to come and speak, I was considering what topics I would write about, and the deadline to submit the topic was prior to the election, and I asked for time to do so, to submit it after the election results, because I wanted to see what happened and maybe I might change my mind as to what I would speak about. But I didn't, because whether Miss Hillary Clinton had been elected or who we have in the White House elected, it didn't change the crossroads that the nation faces. We're at a crossroads. Young, old, and in between, do you know how it feels? Do you know what it means? If you know what it means to be visible yet unseen, to be ignored, to be demeaned, you cannot allow our nation to pretend. To pretend all is well, you simply must tell. Tell our nation, one and all, it's time to answer the call. Destiny is calling because America is falling. The nation is falling behind where she should be at this stage in a democracy. America has a system of unequal education, police killings without justification, slavery embedded in a system of mass incarceration. Unjust policies, unfair rules must not be America's fuel. Racism, implicit bias, subtle discrimination, these are symptoms of an unhealthy nation. In the dire circumstances of the present time, justice or else must permeate the mind. America must bring to an end the criminalization of black skin. Black lives matter is a fact. Self-love is the most affirming act. These facts we need not debate. We need not engage in acts of hate. We are at the intersection of what is and what will be. Will America return to the past or move to her destiny? America's destiny is to treat people equally. If she returns to her past, she will not last. This is the crossroads. It is the crossroads of what is just and fair, and the unjust road which leads nowhere. America has a decision to make. Which road will she take? People of vision know the correct decision. They envision a fair and just nation, a nation without mass incarceration. They see a nation that equally funds its schools, implements just policies and fair rules. A nation where black skin and its melanin variations are not targeted for death and humiliation. They know just and fair is the road to choose, or else America will lose. America will lose the race because she will not keep up with humanity's pace. Our nation must not go back. Justice demands America stay on track. The forward track to a more perfect union it can become, a track requiring singing more than we shall overcome. The nation's destiny can only be reached when her contract with humanity is no longer breached. Until then, the future of our democracy depends. It depends on full-time justice, not now and then. In its words and in its deeds, American democracy must lead. To do so, it must have a system of equal justice for everyone, or else America is destined to become undone. Undone. Do you know how it feels? Do you know what it means? If you know how it feels and you know what it means to be ignored or demeaned, you cannot allow our nation to pretend. To pretend that all is well, you simply must tell. The people in this room are people who I think will tell. Because the country needs voices like yours to speak to the people who you know about what is happening. We simply must tell. So for those people who feel invisible, there may be people in the room who feel that you are sometimes invisible, that you are the seen and the unseen. And there are those who may not feel invisible, but they know what the invisibility means. So that means you can recognize it, and you know that people are treated like they do not matter. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? What category do you fall into? You cannot pretend all is well. You simply must tell. So why isn't our nation well? Racism is the biggest problem. It is the biggest problem why America is not well. The desire to continue to see a certain segment of the population as less than, premised solely on the notion of the complexion, the coloring of their skin. This is unhealthy. It's unhealthy for individuals, it's unhealthy for a nation. And now we have had an election where the notion of racism has almost been front and center in the campaign. And we'd have a media that covered it in not quite casually, but certainly not to the degree that I would have thought would have been appropriate. In many ways, I felt like they covered the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in a way that reflected enjoyment of what he was doing, the spectacle of him. White man, acting with immunity and with impunity, saying whatever he wants. So this is a white American fantasy. The white man can say what he wants, do what he wants, with impunity as if he has immunity. They like it. They like seeing it. Perhaps they will get to do it too. And now we know that as a result of the election, the high percentage of white women who voted for him. And clearly from an intellectual standpoint, we have to know that Hillary Rodham Clinton was far, far more qualified for the position. And yet and still we have someone who now occupies 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who governs in 140 characters of a tweet. This is the danger of racism. I've heard it been said that the campaign that was led by the current president was a dog whistle campaign, that the words and the language used was like a dog whistle to the disaffected white portion of the population who felt that somehow they were being harmed, and the people harming them were those black, those brown people, because throughout President Obama's presidency, at least from a black person's perspective, he was disrespected countless times. And I like to say I voted for Michelle Obama. I voted for America have to call a black woman the first lady. And politicians, they do what they do. So Mr. Obama should be glad he's married to her. But the flack that she took initially in the campaign about being sleeveless, really. And so now we have the current wife of the current president, whose wife has posed nude. Nude, hear me, nude. And yet Mrs. Obama catches flack for being sleeveless. And so I thought that in a country that's so bound up in this idea of the Second Amendment, that I would craft a poem on her behalf entitled The Right to Bear Arms. There is no reason to be alarmed. She has no intent to harm. Our new First Lady does have something to say. She says it in a quiet power play. It is the power radiating from her smile, the power demonstrated in her style. It can be seen day or night as she wears what she thinks is right. Some say hit or miss has been her fashion sense, while others come to her complete defense. For those who think she has not conformed to protocol standards or predecessor norms, for those who want the First Lady covered up and in sleeves and who for prior First Ladies continue to grieve, this is a new day, with a new First Lady having her say. During any season for internal reasons, she is her own woman and she will decide when her arms she will not hide. Protocol enforcement certainly has its place, but not in her closet space. It is her subtle power play, one in which our First Lady will have her way, as she maintains a sense of herself in order to sustain her emotional health, balancing who she is with who others would like her to be. She is the First Lady many thought they would never see. For those who need more time to become accustomed to her face, for those who will never accept her presence in White House space, this is a new era, a new day. Things will be done a different way. We have a new First Lady. She is a First Lady of grace, dignity, and charm. and she has the right to bear arms. That was from Mrs. Obama. Thank you. Now, a lot of people think that the 13th Amendment in this country abolished slavery. It did not. The 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery. You have to read it, because people think, oh, slavery ended. Well, no, it did not end with the 13th Amendment. And it wasn't intended to end with the 13th Amendment. And so I've written a poem about this called, Did You Know? Did you know? Did you know slavery has not been abolished? In the United States, slavery has not been demolished. There's an exception in the 13th Amendment. It lets you know ending slavery was not intended. The lawmakers of 1865 meant to keep institutionalized slavery alive. They wrote their intentions plainly in black and white. Slavery can continue as part of prison life. Read the 13th Amendment sometime, then you'll know what was on the lawmakers' minds. I tell you this fact in case you didn't know. And now you must say, I told you so. Did you know? It's important to know about this in terms of the 13th Amendment, because we have a problem with mass incarceration in this country, and the bodies are predominantly black and brown. That is not by accident, and that is not a result of being the colorblind society. The population of people who are imprisoned or used is basically slave labor for slave wages. So this is part of the capitalism construct, if you will, that requires that there be a segment of the population who will work for little to no money, basically the slaves. And so the people who enacted and passed the 13th Amendment, they meant to stop slavery in the hands of private citizens, but they wanted the government to be able to continue to do it. And so now that we have privatized prisons, publicly traded on the stock market, what does that tell you? You have to have bodies. Whose bodies? The black and the brown body. Slavery has not been abolished in the United States. It has not been demolished. Think about that. Race, privilege, denial, and who matters? The race of the people in the prisons, primarily black and brown. Who had the privilege of denying that? Legislators who enacted laws that nearly tripled, in some cases, the population of the black and the brown. Those who deny it, head in the sand is not going to work. The people in this room know, because so you know, so you must what? Tell. And who matters? They matter. I don't know, well, I shouldn't say I don't know any. Most of the people I know, black people in particular, have had some experience, some encounter with law enforcement in some way that was not necessarily positive. I have brothers, and so I have nephews, and so I'm very aware of the tenuous nature of their existence in this country that views the black body with suspicion. I have friends who have had their children stopped and frisked. My brothers have been stopped, and they won't even tell me anymore because they know I get upset about it. But it has nothing to do with anything that they've necessarily done. It has to do with who they walked in the room being. A human who is being black. A human who is being black. The criminalization of black skin must, what? End. So as you go through the remainder of this conference day and you think about race, privilege, denial, and who matters, think about the people who don't look like most of you in this room, what it is like for them on a daily basis, the daily little indignities that you might suffer, going into the store and being followed, stopped by the police in a car, and scared that you might not live to drive away, because it does happen. I want to close. I don't know where my time is. Since we started late. I want to close with a poem about moving towards justice, because I think if we think about, is it just, is it fair, that's a place we can always be in and know that we could answer it. Is it just? Is it just that I could be stopped because I'm black? Is it just? No. Is it fair? No. And we know this. We know this. And an unfair advantage that it gives to, unfair advantage that the system gives to people of European descent, it's not fair to them either, because you begin to raise children who think that they too are somehow superior. And this idea of white superiority is just that, an idea. It's certainly not true. It's an idea, but it's an idea perpetuated by people who must feel some sense of inferiority to have the need to tell everybody else they're inferior. Even the word minority. Well, let's just think about the world and the coloring of the world. There are more people of color throughout the world than anybody else. So to call people minorities is really something that we, as those people that identify as a minority, should not even engage in, because there's nothing minor about us. And those who seek to label you, remember, the people who seek to label you want to control you. When Sandra Bland passed, I'm going to read this in a minute, I was really very, very affected by her passing in a jail cell following a police stop, because I could see me being stopped by the police. And I'll just tell this little story. When I was in my prior life, I was an assistant U.S. attorney, and I used to try first-degree murder cases. And it was a long time ago, but I know how it is to be around the police, and I know a lot about how they think when they stop you. So I was stopped in a car. I was driving. I had temporary tags, paper tags, and I didn't have them on the back of the car. I had them inside the rear view window, because people steal paper tags off of cars, and I didn't want the tags to be stolen. So when I get stopped by the officer, my pocketbook is behind me on the floor. So he stops me, I roll down the window, he wants to see my license and registration, of course, and it's in my pocketbook. And so I tell him, no sudden moves, of course, I know this, do not make any sudden moves. I tell him, my bag is behind me, do you see it? Yes. My wallet is in there. That is where my license and my registration are located. Do I have permission to get that? Because you don't want to make a sudden move. He says yes, so I get it. I open it up, I give it to him. He gives me a warning. He gives me a warning because somehow in that conversation I managed to tell him about my affiliation with law enforcement and as a prosecutor. But I knew not to make a sudden move because things could go badly for me. And I did not want that to happen. I think for Sandra Bland, she behaved in a manner that was, she could not believe what was happening to her, and so she questioned it. She had the temerity to question it. And so she's not here today because of that. And I've written "Stay in Your Lane" in tribute to her. Before he stops you, he follows your car to watch you. You change lanes in order for him to pass you by. Instead, he stops your car, you don't know why. No turn signal before changing lanes. In disbelief, you explain. It sounds to him like you complain. License and registration, he consents your aggravation. There is something about your tone. You speak with an air he does not condone. He can choose to issue a warning, a citation. He chooses to lower your uppity vibration. He tells you to stop smoking. Is he serious or is he joking? You think he's gone too far. Smoking is clearly legal in your car. You dare to pose the question. Quickly you learn it was not a joke or a suggestion. Whatever he says he expects you to comply, do not look him in the eye. total deference, utmost respect, dial down, genuflect. He is in charge. He is a cop. He told you to stop. Toward him, you should appear to be absolutely polite. After all, he is absolutely white. You're a woman and you're black. Do not speak. Do not talk back. He wears a uniform. He wears a badge. He will taser you. Do not make him mad. But you do. You make him mad. He thinks you've gone too far, opens the door to your car. He will not allow you to film him with the phone. You're going to jail. You're not going home. He moves you roadside out of dash cam view, no video of what he does to you. Sounds of struggle can be heard, and of course there are the words. His backup is on the way. You're on the ground in handcuffs. You'll stay. The ground is to remind you of your place. Jail will be your next space. 3 days in jail and you tragically die. Of course, it would not have happened if he passed you by. But he had to stop you to make it plain. He is in charge. Stay in your lane. So for Sandra Bland and other black women, and those of us who come into and have encounters, we don't have privileges that our white female counterparts would have. Because it's no question in my mind that had a white woman been stopped by that police officer, she would have been given, she might not have even been stopped, but if she had been, she would have just been allowed to proceed on her way. She certainly would not have been taken to jail. So I'll close with moving toward justice. Moving toward justice. And hope that you begin and continue to think about what is fair and just in America. It's time to step forward to help our nation. America needs our participation. Whatever your occupation or level of education, whether a maid, a cook, or a storekeeper, each of us has the ability to teach her. Whatever your religious affiliation, whatever your spiritual inclination, America's people must beseech her. Lawyers, writers, preachers. Toward justice, America must bend. Liberty and justice, the people must defend. Regardless of your career or position, scientist, athlete, barber, physician. Poets, musicians, artists, entertainers. America needs conscious people to sustain her. We must elevate ourselves and our nation. This is not the time for hesitation. Thank you so much.